I'm here today with Jason Collier at VMware Explore 2022. It's the official day number 1. We're here to talk about the new VMware Explore show and their announcements. So Jason, you're an exhibitor kind of guy at the show. What do you think about the show and how do you feel about what's going on?
Well, it's good to be back live, I can tell you that. It's, last 2019 was the last time we actually had a live show.
Absolutely.
Seeing all the people here has been fantastic. I really like getting those one-to-one interactions with basically different customers, partners, and other people just in the industry.
A lot better than the Zoom stuff.
Oh man, I tell you what, and this is the first time we've actually done one of these being face-to-face as well. So
yeah, exactly. Well, it's been like 5 years since the last one.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's the first time in a while, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Might as well count it new.
Exactly. So what do you think of the floor and stuff like that? I mean, the facilities seem like they're fairly nice and stuff. Have they upgraded the Moscone Hall and stuff like that?
They did. I remember because in 2019, this is the first time I think I've been back to San Francisco since 2019.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, they have put a lot of work into it. One, the Salesforce Tower is done too, right? And that's quite a grand piece of architecture there.
A lot of building in the area and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then they got that elevated park and all that stuff. But then the Moscone itself, I mean, it's getting a facelift which is why they kept having the VMworlds in Vegas.
Yeah. So it was after that we had one show here, and then kind of things shut down because of the COVID stuff like that.
Yeah, and honestly, it gave them time to finish a lot of the work here. But I really like the kind of the way they got it done. Internally, it feels like kind of the same though, the layouts and all that stuff. But it does feel a little bit bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the old shows were significantly bigger. I mean, 25,000 plus people. I'm not sure what the numbers are. I heard 10,000 today, but I don't know if that's a realistic number or not. But
I've heard numbers all the way from 6 to 9. So
6 to 9,000. So somewhere in that range, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of big announcements at the show. I mean, the whole vSphere 8 kind of thing with Project Monterey started rolling out. So what's the story on Monterey, Jason?
So Project Monterey. So Project Monterey is very interesting, and it's really integrating the DPUs into the into the equation, right? And they're effectively
just another compute entity in the
network. Yeah, when you think about it, so this is basically putting a DPU, a smart NIC into the chassis, and there's a lot of things that can be offloaded to that. And I think the primary goal of Monterey is to get kind of some of the NSX functionality, out to the DPU where you can actually route the right traffic to the right machine within a VMware cluster.
Yeah. But in order to put NSX out on this smart NIC stuff like that, you got to have ESX running. You got to have all sorts of vSphere functionality sitting out there on this DPU. So
and
it's a whole new world. It's a whole new Wild West.
It's a whole new Wild West. And the interesting thing, whole new Wild West. One of the interesting things about how this is architected, it's a drastic change from the way data center's been doing it, but it's a lot more like how cloud has been doing it. When you dissect AWS and you look at the AWS Nitro architecture, guess what? It's primarily the DPUs that are effectively running it. You got that Nitro card that's serving as root of trust and a smart NIC that's intelligently directing that traffic out there.
So this stuff's been running in the cloud all along?
Oh yeah. So this is like, when you look at what this is and what Project Monterey really is, it's trying to bring to the data center what has been running in AWS for the last few years.
No way.
Yep.
I thought it was just a smart NIC. Encryption and all that stuff outboard and stuff like that.
It's it's going to go through a variety of iterations, and I think this is where you're going to see some fundamental data center change in the next 3 to 5 years.
So what DPUs are actually going to be supported?
So out of the gate, the AMD Pensando NIC is supported, and then the NVIDIA Bluefield is supported.
All right, so there are other ones that are currently in process and stuff like that.
There's a couple more. Yeah, it's just those are the two that are certified at launch. So.
Yeah. So when did AMD buy Pensando? It's got relatively new, right?
It is relatively new. It was so the deal's been going on for a period of time, which I cannot necessarily disclose, but I may have been involved in the early on discussions there. But I believe we ended up closing. I think it was in May, when it actually fully closes and
Pensando is
executed.
sitting on the back end of some storage arrays and stuff like that. It's not like it's being used a lot of places, but it's not really very visible. You know?
It's not very visible. I mean, Pensando in general, they have had very good traction in basically in cloud, basically
cloud
a lot of cloud
too,
providers, right? And so they, like I said, they've added that DPU functionality. And one of the real interesting things they've got, the way it's all coded, they got this whole P4 engine technology. So, and the interesting thing about Pensando and Pensando's heritage is effectively it was the crew that Chambers always spun out at Cisco, MPLS, right?
No way.
You got Mario, Prim, Luca, and Sony.
Okay. All right, well, we got to get back to vSphere here.
Yeah.
So, the other thing that came out with vSphere 8 was EXI concurrent updates. So these sorts of things can now take place a lot quicker, when they upgrade ESXi and stuff like that. And one of the things they mentioned is they could do an upgrade out on the DPU of ESXi, which is running there in order to run NSX out there and stuff like that. So
that's big when it comes down to when you're talking about serviceability.
I thought they had it all along.
Well, I can tell you that the times that I have done it, on basically 6 and 7, it works, right?
Yeah.
And it works. It goes through. It does its thing. And the reality is, I think they put more polish on it. And then also, really adding the ability, having the DPU in there, so now you've got, here's another, kind of a supported processor that you gotta roll into that.
It's a whole different compute world.
It is, and trying to do those things, doing those things in a non-disruptive fashion is tough. I mean, kind of my heritage and background from where I came from at scale, right?
Yeah.
And
it's not easy.
One of the big things, I mean, I think we had 5 patents alone wrapped up in our upgrade system that was for doing like rolling upgrades. It's an exceptionally complex task when you look at how many moving parts there are, right?
It's like properly and all that stuff.
It's like trying to change the oil in the car while it's going 70 miles an hour down the road, right?
All right, maybe 35, but whatever.
Well, I think that's what the update was. The update made it they could go faster down the road, right?
Yeah. Okay. The other thing that came out with vSphere 8, and there's probably a half a dozen other things, but it was API implementation. So they're doing a lot more cloud-like API functionality. So you wanted to access vSphere functionality, you vCenter, or you'd set up some sort of a VHA or something like that. Nowadays, they're starting to drive it through API. So
I think that's a really smart move because, I mean, if you're wanting to tie more into the DevOps and how the cloud world works, right?
It's all API
driven, right? So when you think about, kind of what we were talking about earlier about how, bringing these, Pensando, bringing the smart NICs in, things like that, and making the data center look more cloud-like.
Right.
It's kind of a natural evolution to basically push it to be API driven.
Yeah. The other big story was vSAN 8. vSAN 8 comes along. Apparently, it's got a faster data path. So they've sped up all their I/O, and they talked about some of the applications running 20% faster and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They moved to faster snapshots too. I mean, it's to a large extent, snapshots used to be a sort of a weak point.
Thank goodness, because I have dealt extensively with snapshots. I've been working on a project at AMD where we got our VMware architecture migration tool, right? Where you can move from one architecture, but snapshottings are a part of what we do in this cold migration process, getting it over. And even on 7, one of the things I do is I'm doing testing on it, right? And the snapshots they're building up, and it gets to the point where I start getting errant failures. Why is it? And then I'm like, snapshot timeout. And I'm like, so
faster snapshots a good thing.
Faster snapshots are a great thing, and because I mean it has been a real pain having to go through, and we got to purge them out, right? When we're doing testing, I mean one of the parts of the test script that we have going is to basically remove all the snapshots.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing they went to is a single-tier model, whereas the old vSAN had caching, SSDs, and back-end was disk. Now they're moving to a single tier, so there's really only one storage tier, one storage pool that, to some extent, I guess that helps the faster path through the I/O and stuff like that.
Well, I bet that's predominantly driven too by when you look at basically the server market and what people are selling out there. I mean, it's going to be NVMe, and if it's not NVMe-based flash, it's going to be,
it's going to be a SAS-based, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be pretty damn fast.
It's going to be pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of the market, God to say, and the VAST guys were pushing this like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Disk is dead. Flash is here. Live on Flash. They're wrong, of course. But they want to, we wouldn't have this discussion.
Tape is dead, mainframe's dead, right?
Oh,
except
stuff.
they
They're
still
all
like
wrong,
multi-billion-dollar businesses.
Exactly, and it still lives. But the fact is, Flash is here. It's enterprise ready. It's fast as hell. And it's got the capacity. If anything, capacity's going up.
I mean, and you've got basically these all NVMe chassis. I mean, reality is you don't need 2 tiers, right?
Right.
Just let it roll. And it will be interesting to see how they work that, in the future. I mean, as these, and this is where I think too, where you start to get those more disaggregated style data center architectures with the DPUs and all that stuff. Getting more intelligent routing to different storage tiers, kind of at the edge of where the network compute is happening.
Shared and stuff like that.
And talking about data locality, this is going to make something where these we've been talking about data locality pieces for a long time, but this is going to make that more of like kind of an application-driven thing, especially when you're looking at the API interfaces too.
Right.
So. It's going to be interesting to see how all that goes.
It seems that it's interesting to see vSphere and vSAN put both of them upping their game in this, faster, more API-driven, more new technology and stuff like that. The whole DPUs, which is, like you say, is a more cloud-like solution to some extent. The other thing that came out was a new device support. I'm assuming that's NVMe sorts of Optane, non-Optane kinds of devices and stuff like that.
Probably not too much Optane support out there anymore.
I think they have Optane support already in there, right? Which is okay. Yeah, these things happen. We'll talk flash memory sometime. Anyway, the other thing that they announced was a couple of cloud solutions: the CloudFlex Storage and CloudFlex Compute. My understanding of CloudFlex Storage is it's got 2 aspects. One is this, it's a NetApp FSx ONTAP. It's available on AWS, and now you can actually plug it into vSphere and vSAN and all this stuff, and you can have that sort of storage rather than having normal vSAN storage for VCF cloud functionality and stuff.
So you can use it basically as kind of an attached cloud data store. Is that what it's like? Kind of a cloud tier?
Before, if you wanted to bump up vSAN storage, you had to put more devices on. You had to configure more storage on each one of the servers, and you were sort of you were consuming a lot of infrastructure. Whereas with ONTAP, NFS, or FSX and stuff like that, you can kind of just tack on, I want 100 gig or 10 terabytes or whatever the number is. It's sort of it gives
it more of a utility consumption model, right?
It is a utility consumption model kind of thing, but now it's file services and stuff like that. So, and there's another part of this which is it's almost like they have the same sort of thing, only internally it's not using ONTAP, but it's like a file service that they can grow or shrink at a consumptive level kind of thing, rather than having to configure an instance with more storage and all this other stuff. So you have now, from a VCF perspective, and you might have 3 or 4 options, but one is vSAN, one is CloudFlex storage, and one is this NetApp FSx stuff.
Yeah.
So that's great. The other thing they mentioned was CloudFlex Compute, which again is more a consumptive.
You think it's almost like kind of that. They've always talked about like cloud bursting, right?
Yeah.
Where it's interesting. I was actually talking to some folks. It was a video game producer that has a very large online MMO presence and all that stuff. And I was talking to them about how their data center architecture looks, and they had their cloud stuff that they had built out in their data centers, running their. And I think they were using Kubernetes and stuff like that to basically scale it out. But then there's a limited amount of capacity that they've got in these pods, and one of the things they built into it was the ability to cloud burst out into like an AWS or Google or Azure. So they built it where they could do this multi-cloud bursting. This seems like this is kind of a way of VMware to get into that similar market where you can offer that to the data center.
And it's also another one of these, it's more cloud-like. It provides a more subscription model to the compute rather than having to buy an EC2 instance or something like that. I need a little more compute in this space. I just turn on some functionality that says, okay, you've got more compute. I don't know if that includes GPUs and DPUs compute, but I imagine this is all CPU at the start.
I wouldn't mind, digging into a little bit more of the details on that one later down the road, because that seems to me, if you get the provisioning model right for it, where if it's like dynamically, like almost like a DRS where it's moving, VMs back and forth, and it decides, hey, DRS, it's like, if it decides to move
like
it
it's
up
moving
to
the
cloud.
VMs as much as it's moving the compute, but I haven't quite figured out how they're doing this yet.
This would be worth digging into. We may have to do a little research on this, right?
Got to be an AMD solution or something. I'm just thinking, I'm on the side here. All right, the other big mention was Aria, which is a brand new rebranding effort of vRealize and Cloud Health and a couple other things, and they got a whole new. So it's underlying Aria, which is apparently their new management framework, multi-cloud and stuff like that. So you can have one control plane effectively for wherever things runs, wherever it goes, whether it's VCF or Tanzu or whatever. But they've got this thing called Aria Graph, which is it's some sort of internal mechanism that graphs all the nodes of your network, all the nodes, whether they're sitting on the cloud, whether they're sitting over here in the back end, whether they're sitting on the truck or whatever. So they've got this, so they know where all the nodes are, they know how they're all connected, and now they can just traverse this thing to sort of understand what's going on and what's related to what. And so they've got like 3 functions that are built on top of this, probably. They got multiple layers, but the end is like they've got area cost, which is going to give you visibility and budgeting kinds of things for wherever you're running that workload. You got area operations, which provides sort of that single pane of glass for all those nodes running wherever they are, right? And you got Aria operations. I guess it's vRealize ops kind of thing.
Right.
It provides some functionality and stuff like that, but it's all built on top of Area Graph. They got this thing called Area Guardrails, which sits there across all these things that provides sort of a
put like barriers around
boundary conditions for
right.
what you can and can't do, and and stuff like that. And they've got Area Migration, which apparently does some migration of workloads. You were mentioning some AMD tool that you were talking about?
Yeah, and so this AMD tool, it's we call it our VMware Architecture Migration Tool, VAMPed. And what it does is...
Did you say vampire?
VAMPed, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
VAMT. And really what it does is you can effectively... And we open source this too, by the way. So it's an open source tool. You can go out on GitHub and get it. And it's actually on VMware's sample repo.
No way.
But what it does, it just allows you to easily migrate from one CPU architecture to another. And in doing that, it does it via cold migration, because you can't live migrate between different architecture platforms. And it will actually check to see that VMtools is running on a VM.
Know the computes are all x86 compatible and stuff like that?
Yeah, right.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, right.
I got
you. But it'll like basically check the VMtools is running on a VM. You give it like, here's this list of VMs. So it'll go through, it'll shut it down, it'll take a snapshot of it, it'll basically migrate it, and it'll do either, if you want to migrate the storage, you can do that. You kind of define what storage pool you want it in, or if it's on shared storage, you can leave it there and just move the compute piece. It'll fire that machine back up. It'll go through, do validation and testing on that to verify that it's good, and then it continues on to the next one. Now, some of the things we've got, you can put a change window in, so we've got full change window support, so you can have it scheduled after hours. So if you want to
do so many,
want to move like 100 machines or something, and you go through, you can kick it off, you can say how long you want that change window to be, right? There's a full audit tracking in it, there's full rollback in it. And like I said, we've got a lot of validation tools wrapped around it. I've done a lot of testing, and on shared storage, it can do about 100 VMs in about 20 minutes.
That's not bad.
So it's not bad, right?
And that's with vSAN 7 and the old snapshots, right? I mean, so
that's what
might
that
even be better with the
it
new
might
one.
be. We're gonna have to try it out. And but yeah, and it's open source tool. It's out on GitHub, and you can basically download it. And it's just a big 2,600 lines worth of PowerShell, kind of out there to do it. But there's actually we put a lot of thought into the design of it, though. And there's a lot of things like there's audit tracking where we're putting basically tags so you can see what happened in there, and
I just moved my website from one site to another. I needed this sort of thing for this move.
Yeah, I know it's good.
But it wasn't,
it can be a nightmare, right?
I know.
And one of the things, if you're moving 10 machines, it's not bad doing it manually. If you're moving 10,000 machines, it's a different story,
it's a different
right?
World.
And we've tested this up to a pretty reasonable amount of like 1,000 machine kind of stuff, and it's been running pretty good. So
it's not bad. The other thing the area has is Area Insights, which I guess is trying to bring some intelligence to what's going on with your workloads and try to understand how to best manage them or best optimize them and stuff like that.
Getting some AI ML buzzwords in there, right? Because you can't do
yet.
a product release without AI ML. Right?
It's coming, I'm sure. The other thing they talked a lot about was Tanzu Application Program Platform and Tanzu Kubernetes Operations. Now, Tanzu Application Platform, as far as I can tell, is the developer Kubernetes experience. It doesn't contain mission control or Kubernetes grid or any of this stuff. It's like a developer open source version of Kubernetes, and you can run anywhere. You can run on Red Hat. You can run on just about anything you want, but it's bare minimum open source level functionality that now is released by VMware and supported by VMware. So you've got enterprise class support and stuff like that, which brings a lot of interest to the enterprise and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely to the enterprise. I mean, that's always one of the biggest issues with open source technologies, right? Is like an enterprise, who do you point the finger at when something breaks, right?
Right.
And in DevOps style models, typically the open source Kubernetes style developers are used to basically owning that full stack and having to support it, but it's not. It's great for startups, bad for enterprise,
right. The other thing they talked about was Tanzu Kubernetes Operations, which is, it's got mission control, it's got everything you need to run your Kubernetes visibly and understand what's going on and stuff like that. So it's enterprise class again. It packages up some of the tools that they've had, separate packages and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I haven't played with mission control much, but does that also allow you to control like the scaling level of the Kubernetes stuff in
I think
there?
it allows you to scale, but the other key is it allows you to run these Kubernetes clusters wherever you want. So if you wanted to run them on Amazon, you can use mission control to fire them up. You want to run them on Azure, you want to run them on Google.
And it gives you that single dashboard into basically running a distributed.
Yeah, that's a nice flexibility. And they announced mission control a couple of years ago and stuff like that, but they've been adding more and more functionality.
Yeah.
I asked today, I need a Tanzu clue changer, because they got like 15 different versions of Tanzu out there. They got Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, they got Mission Control, they got KAO, TAP, TAS. It goes on and on.
Yeah, well,
Tanzu Mesh.
One of the things overall, when you get a company that's been around as long as VMware has, right?
It's tough.
And you got a lot of acquisitions, so there's like...
No shit. Excuse the French.
But you've got all these different paths of like here's this product and the marketing behind it, this product and marketing behind it, this product and marketing behind it, and it looks like that what ARIA is really meant to do is kind of bring everything back.
Try to start consolidating some of this stuff.
Like you look at and here's all the options of everything you can get, and you're like, I don't want to pick that crap out. Can I just pick out the, hey, give me the premium package?
Exactly. Enterprise level and small, medium, large stuff like
hopefully this is a SKU reduction practice. So. Right.
The other thing they announced and made a big splash on was the new Edge Compute level Stack 2. So they've got, so vSphere and VMware want to play in the edge. They've got like enterprise edge, they got network edge, and they got device edge. Device edge is a Raspberry Pi with 2 sensors on it, so it's not going to be running too much vSphere. And the enterprise, that's a robo kind of environment. So if you've got a small cluster of systems there, you can control it from a central site. They play well in that space. But they're trying to get in this network edge. And one of the charts they showed today, I think it was Dish's 5G network is running vSphere Edge Compute Stack on every cell tower they run in America today. So they've got presence, pop kind of things sitting out there on these cell towers all over the place.
Yeah, and you look at some of the hardware vendors and some of the stuff that they've put out. We're we're sitting near the Lenovo booth right now, and I see some of the edge solutions they've got over there.
Well,
and it's pretty, it's a like nice little box, kind of almost like NEBS compliant and geared for rugged deployment. So just get a couple of zip ties and stick her on a cell tower, and you're good to go.
Battery
Right?
and a photovoltaic, and you're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
That would be out in Texas, backside of Texas sometime. Either that or
I know something about that.
Oil rigs or something.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know about that. So that was about it from VMware's announcements. I mean, obviously they got a lot more stuff going on. They got their whole a slew of different seminars that they're putting on and different training and stuff like that. I was talking to one gal and it said that they had Moscone West upper floors, all this hands-on lab stuff. They used to have hands-on lab would take up a quarter of the space. I said, "Where's the hands-on lab?" They took a whole floor of Moscone West to do it. And so it's still a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah,
There's a whole partner team.
I haven't even been over to Moscone West
yet.
And I was just like, I'm looking forward to going over and checking it out.
I thought it was registration. It used to be over there. No, it's over down south and stuff like that. But so the floor has been pretty good, actually. You spent a lot of time in your booth and stuff like that?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the booth. Been having reasonable traffic, but I've also spent a lot of time, walking around. And like I said, it's like a family reunion, right? I don't think I've made it across the show floor without somebody yelling like, "Hey, Collier!" and it's been so much fun, like reconnecting with old friends, and then also being able to see a lot of the solutions, because it's been a while since we've been in person, right? And seeing stuff up close and being able to look at it, feel it, touch it, see some of the server solutions, the storage solutions that are out there.
I would
and then
say there's a lot less hardware this time, this go around. I don't know if that's a COVID thing or it's just, whatever. But
everybody got lazy and doesn't want to ship stuff anymore.
It used to be the storage vendors sit there and have 6 or 7 racks of storage, with small, medium, large and stuff like that. It's all whiteboards, and that's a little mini whiteboard and stuff.
I enjoy going and checking out, really too, like the smaller booths and the startups that this might be their first VMworld, and seeing what it is that they've got and what that's going to do to help push data center in the next 3 to 5 years, right? There's some interesting companies in composable infrastructure that we've talked to before, and seeing some of those things is always exciting. I love seeing that, and what innovation is still yet to come, and like kind of what's that bleeding edge stuff. This is always a good way to get exposure to that and get access to it. One of the things I love too is when you come here, I mean, like everybody sends their A game, right? And I can pretty much guarantee if like me as somebody at AMD and I want to go talk to a startup, I probably got one of the C-level guys are in the booth, right? And you can have really dynamic and engaging conversations, and that's one of the things I just absolutely love about these live shows like VMworld is one, the customer contact is great, and customer contact, partner contact, different the OEM company contacts for us, but then also the startups and the fact that you can really just you get that level of access, but you don't get it to just like one company. You get it to like
all show long, right?
Like
I mean, people.
70,
I've run into people
companies
all over the place. Here that God, I was walking into a bar. I just wanted to buy a burger and go back to home, back to the hotel room. And the whole Morpheus crew was there, and they bought my dinner. And then a VMware guys started coming along, so it was crazy.
It's a good thing about being in an analyst space, right? Everybody always wants to buy you dinner.
I guess. That's interesting. So from my perspective, wasn't a lot of hardware on the floor. Obviously, the floor is a lot smaller than ever was before.
Than it has been,
you mentioned like the new generation technologies and stuff like that. It used to be. It'd surround this thing, right? It'd be like 3 or 4 rows of that sort of level of functionality.
There's really only a couple of the emerging stuff.
1.5 rows over on one side. So I would say it's proportional to the size of the floor.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of storage vendors I would have expected to see here. There just aren't here. Right? I won't name them, but obviously there are plenty that are here as well. But they just didn't think it was worthwhile at this point. I guess it's the first time they've actually had a big presence after COVID and stuff like that. So I'm sure it's a bit of a change. And we're here with CTO advisors.
at the
world
flying
view
cloud.
here. And they, they spent an arm and a leg putting this rug in and bringing this RV down here and stuff like that. So it's very nice.
Big shout out to Keith for letting
big
us,
shout out for Keith putting this together. I really appreciate it. I don't know. So what else do you think is this show? I mean, is this, why Explore versus World was quite a big discussion point with the execs and stuff like that. They hemmed and hawed and said, it's a new world and we want a new branding kind of thing, but
I think it was stupid.
Some marketing guy decided it was time to change.
I was just like,
keep everybody on their toes.
I didn't look. Did they get a new CMO? Because the first thing any CMO wants to do is change branding.
I thought they were going to get a new CMO recently. I'm not saying that's the reason, but that could be the reason.
It's like VMworld was a great brand. And it was a great brand, and everybody. I still haven't really met anybody that's not called it VMworld. So
it's a bit.
All the old timers still call it VMworld.
It's a bit tough to change that sort of mentality and stuff like that. Well, I don't know. What else do you want to talk about the show? Is it?
No, overall I think it was good. It was good. It was good getting back. Like I said, good getting back. Great seeing everyone. Good being in person. You just can't replace it, right?
Right.
No amount of Zoom calls in the world are ever going to make it good.
Right.
I'm still impressed that when they were doing the virtual events, I don't know what the turnout for the virtual events were. I can tell you I didn't turn out.
Well, we did quite a few for Tech Field Day and stuff like that. And
we did that.
It was okay. It wasn't the same.
Just not the same, right?
Not the same.
Especially Tech Field Day style of event where you're just sitting in a U-shaped table and you got your
throwing stuff at the vendors and stuff like that. You can't do that on Zoom.
You can't do that on Zoom. It doesn't have the same impact.
Right.
Literally.
That too.
Literally doesn't have the same impact.
That too. But it was okay. I mean, we did what we had to do to get through the process and stuff like that. But this is a new world. What do you think? Okay, the other big elephant in the room?
Yep.
Broadcom, purchase of VMware and stuff like that. So there was a lot of discussion between the analyst community and the executives. What does this mean? How are you going to keep your edge? I mean, are you screwing the customers and that sort of stuff? I think they pretty much tried to put that to rest, but it's still a struggle to try to see what's going on there.
It is, and I mean, I think there's still a lot of question marks, right? And I can tell you officially, with my workplace, my comment is no comment. But I think there's still a lot. I think there's still a lot to just be. There's a lot of questions to be answered.
The surprising thing about VMware, it's been bought and sold like 4 or 5 times in the last 10 years. I mean, EMC, Dell, and back again, and so it's not like it's immune to this sort of thing.
Right. And it's held its own personality the entire time, right? So there's a lot of questions still, I think, to be answered.
Right. I mean, I talked to one exec. I said, attrition was kind of a big issue here as we started this discussion with Broadcom. Seems like the first day of Broadcom's announcement, LinkedIn, went through the roof with respect to activity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He said, there's a lot of attrition in the industry, and I agree with that to some extent. Some of that's self-serving, but he said, in the end, VMware's been through a lot over the course of the last couple of decades, and we're a fairly resilient company, and we'll live through this, and we'll be better for it. It's not like we're going to go away. It's not like we're abandoning ship or anything like that. Yeah. We're here for the long haul. We got a hell of a decent install base, and we're going to make that as best as we possibly can.
Yeah, fantastic install base.
They're pushing it as far as they can.
Yep.
Well, Jason, this has been great. Anything else you'd like to say to our listening audience before we close?
No, I'd just say, thanks for joining us, is what I'd say. And it's been a good show. Great to see everybody. Great to do one of these live and in person.
Yeah, finally. I want to thank Keith and the CTO Advisor Q for putting us up and giving us this ability to do this sort of thing.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Well, this has been great. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.